Hi friends, my name is Nataraj. In this video I am going to talk about how to develop web application having static web pages. Static web pages. You know, web pages are two types. Number one, static web pages are also called as passive web pages. About us page, contact us, all these are what? Static web pages. How can you say web page is static web page? You give 1000 requests to that web page, content of the web page will not change. Such web pages are called what? Static web pages. For example, you take about us page. It gives information about the company, when it is started, how it is started, why it is started. You give 1000, 20,000 requests to that website, content of the web page will not change. That's why that is called what? Static web pages. Generally we use HTML files to develop static web pages. What about second type of web pages? Dynamic web pages, also called as what? Active web pages. Dynamic web pages also called as what? Active web pages. These are the web pages whose content will vary based on what? Input values of the request or time of the request generation. The content of this web page will change either based on the input values of the request or time of request generation. For example, you take inbox page, Gmail inbox page. If I submit my username and my password, inbox page shows my email account email messages. If I submit X person username and password, it will show what? Email messages of the X person. That means the content of the inbox page is not fixed, either based on time of request generation. At 5 o'clock 4 mails are there, at 10 o'clock more mails will come and add. So that's why that is called what? Dynamic web page. Inbox page is what? Dynamic web page. So examples are inbox page, login page and etc. Sir, how can you say login page is dynamic web page? Suppose you give a wrong password or wrong username, you will get error messages. That means content of the page is changing there itself. Content of the page is changing there itself. So that's why we call that one as dynamic web page. When I say dynamic web page, it need not to be dynamic for 100%. Out of 100 lines of content, if 1-2 lines are dynamic, then it is called what? Dynamic web page. Then also it is called as what? Dynamic web page. So the final conclusion is, if content of the web page remains same for all the requests, static web page. The content of the web page changes either based on input values of the request or what? Time of request generation. Then it is called as what? Dynamic web page. For example, there is a page displaying stock market share values. You give request at morning 9 o'clock, certain values it will show. 9:45, some more values it will show. 9:50, some more values it will show. That's why it is called as what? Dynamic web page. The pages that shows live game scores, dynamic web page. The pages that shows news are news items. So news will change continuously. Okay. So that is also dynamic web page. So website is called as good website when there is lot of dynamic content to display, not the static content. So generally website contains both what? Static web pages, dynamic web pages. Static web pages, dynamic web pages, but website is called as good website when it is having what? More and more dynamic web pages. So that's nice. So now let me talk about what is web application. Web application is collection of web components. It is a collection of web components generating web pages. It is collection of web components having ability to generate web pages. simply having ability to generate what? Web pages. That's it. Yeah, there are two types of web components here: static web components, dynamic web components. If web components are generating static web pages, they are called static web component. HTML files comes under static web components. If web components are generating dynamic web pages, then they are called dynamic web component. Servlet component, JSP component, all these components are called as what? Dynamic web component. Even ASP.NET PHP components also called as what? Dynamic web components. Once again, two types of web components: static web components. There are two types of web components: static web components. The static web components generate what? Static web pages. Generate what here? Static web pages. Already have explained what is static web page. Fixed content, for all requests same content will be given. So generally we use HTML files as what? Static web components. B. Dynamic web components. Dynamic web components. So generate what? Generate dynamic web pages. Examples are what? Servlet components, JSP components, ASP.NET components, PHP components, and etc. So every web application is collection of web components, okay, generating web pages. If web components are generating static web pages, static web component, HTML file. If web components are generating dynamic web pages, they are called what? Dynamic web components. Servlet JSP components are called what? Dynamic web components. Fine. I would like to explain how to develop a web application and how to execute that web application, okay, when it is having static web pages. That means I want to develop that web application having static web components. So let me give the procedure. So procedure to develop, comma, deploy and execute web application having static web components. Yes. Now the static web components I want to take here are HTML files. I want to take here are simply what files here? HTML files. You know that in every web application three things will be there: development, deployment, and what? Execution. I mean, it's a testing kind. Development means we develop web application outside the server, outside the web server. Later we keep in the server. And whenever we give request, web components execute dynamically. That's why that is called what? Testing phase or what? Execution phase. But one thing is clear, we just develop web application having web components. We never develop web servers. Web servers are already available in the market. Best example is for Java people Tomcat server, for .NET people IAS server. For PHP people generally they use Apache web server. We are Java guys, okay, I am going to use Tomcat server, okay, to execute my what? Web application. So in this example I am not going to generate any dynamic web pages. I am going to generate only static web pages. That means static web components will be there in the web application. Only HTML files I am going to take in the web application. No Servlet JSP components I am going to take. As I said too, web application can be there having just static web pages, can be there having just dynamic web pages, can be there having both static and dynamic web pages. But a good website generally contains what? Both static and dynamic web pages. But today my target is just developing, deploying and executing web application just having what? Static web pages. That means I am going to take static web components in my web application. Step number 1. Make sure that Tomcat server installed properly. Yes. So I already started server and it is running also. Server startup 1470 milliseconds. That indicates yes, in my system Tomcat server is properly installed and it is even started proper. Number 2, create deployment directory structure for web application. Listen, you should pack and give web application to web server in the angle web server expects. You cannot pack however you want. You cannot pack as you want. You should pack as required for what? Server. But luckily, almost all Java based servers like Tomcat, WebLogic, WebSphere, JBoss, Resin Web Server, all of them are recognizing same packing mechanism. That means same deployment directory structure. Due to this, I can say Java based web applications are what? Vada. Write once, deploy anywhere. You develop once and deploy anywhere. They are deployment directory structure, packing directory structure. The way we develop static and dynamic web components is not specific to one server. Is common for all the servers. That's why Java web applications are portable across the multiple web servers. Even though you develop and execute in one server, you can happily move that application to another server. Happily you can move that. So that's why Java web applications are portable across the multiple servers. Java web applications are deployable in multiple servers. Are you getting my point? Okay. So this deployment directory structure is originally designed by Sun Microsystem and supported by all the server. In fact, Sun Microsystem has given instruction to all the vendor companies who are creating these servers like Tomcat, WebLogic, etc. They have given instruction to those vendor companies. His servers, all you people must support this kind of deployment directory structure. It is nothing but packing mechanism. What it says, sir? What is the web application? What are the web components? In that one, how many are Java based web components? How many are non-Java based web components? It talks about how to separate them. It talks about how to pack them. That's it. Nothing else. So, I'm taking my web root folder. You can create this folder anywhere. Why it is called web root folder? Entire deployment directory structure of web application begins with this folder. That's why I call it as what? Web root folder. Web root folder. Yes, under this I am taking one fixed folder called webinf. Under this webinf, I am taking one more fixed folder called classes. But I am adding two files here, two HTML files, home.html, contactus.html. Many other folders will be there, but this is the minimum, that is enough, that is required when you are developing web application, just having what? Static web components. When you are developing web application, just having what? Static web components. This folder is called web root folder. Why, sir? From this place only entire directory structure of web application is designed. That's why this is called as what? Web root folder. C drive is called root folder because entire drive content starts from that particular directory. That's why it is called root folder. D drive, E drive, F drive, all these are called root folders. Why? Because entire content in that drive begins with that particular folder. Similarly, I call it as web root folder because entire web application begins from this folder. This folder can have any name. It's not fixed one. Any name, but do remember later this name only becomes web application name or context path of the web application. Web application name is not a polished word. People also calls it as what? Context path. What your context path? Then what is this webinf? It is not web underscore inf, it is web hyphen inf. Should be in uppercase. Must be in uppercase. More importantly, it is a logical partition within the web application to separate Java based web components from non-Java based web component. Generally all Java classes like servlet component or its helper classes we will place in classes folder, which is inside web.inf folder. Right now I am not placing anything there because I don't have any servlet components in this web application. Why we don't have? Because we are not keeping any dynamic web components in this web application. In this web application. So that's why you can even say classes folder is optional. When classes folder is optional, okay, you can even say web.inf is optional, but only for knowledge sake, to give the feeling in deployment directory structure, yes. So some components we keep place inside the web.inf. Generally they are Java based components. Non-Java based components, okay, like HTML files, JSP files, okay, because even though JSP is Java based, but it contains more and more tags. We don't write real .java kind of code. So images, audio files, video file, .css files, so lot of things we place outside the web.inf folder. So that means within the web application, web.inf acts as what? Logical partition to separate Java web components from non-Java web components. Java web component, its helper classes will be placed in classes folder, which is there inside web.inf, and non-Java web components will be placed what? Outside web.inf folder. What folder here? Outside web.inf folder. So this is what? Creating deployment directory structure for what? Web application. Step number 3. Yes. So develop web components. Develop web components. Right now we don't have multiple web components. Two HTML files are there. Let me develop them. So before developing these web components, let me create those. Let me create the deployment directory structure. So here I am taking new. Here my folder is first app. Under this web.inf folder, yeah, classes is optional, but for your understanding sake I am taking one classes folder. Yes, in the coming examples we will see how to develop web application even having servlet components as the web components, and how to keep both static and dynamic web components. But as of now in this application I am just taking what? Static web components, not the dynamic web components. That's why I am keeping my classes folder empty, web.inf folder only with the classes folder. I am not adding any web components. That's nice. So deployment directory structure is ready. Then I want to go for develop web components. Let me develop the web components. It's a HTML file. You can use any editor, but right now I am using this editor. Right now I am using this editor. Let me use HTML page, and I can increase the font also. Let me take a big good font. Apply. Okay. So I think everyone knows basic HTML. I am going to use some basic HTML because static web pages, and I want to even have navigation through hyperlink. First page should provide hyperlink to navigate to second page. Second page should provide hyperlink to navigate back to what? First page. For that I'll take h1 style is equal to text-align colon center. Now center tag is deprecated here. It's never recommended to use this. Welcome to Java. After having this message, I just want to provide one hyperlink. Right now I am taking very less amount of content. If you want, you can add lot of content, or you can take the support of designer support. You can take the support of what? User interface designer to make this page more colorful and beautiful. You know that in every Java project development, 3 peoples will be there: Java developers, UI developers, and SQL developers. UI developers responsibility is designing the web page. Java developer responsibility is providing dynamic functionality to those web pages. So by adding more and more components. And SQL developers work is just helping queries and PL SQL procedures and database designing. Those people will take care of that. But right now, with minimum knowledge of HTML, I am going to use. Center tag is deprecated here. Better not to use this one. Always go for styles kind of thing. So now, I just want to provide one hyperlink. Ahref. Ahref. Here I would like to add contact. What is the page I have taken? According to contact us. Yes. Let me save in the same place according to my deployment directory structure. First app, always remember web components like static web components generally will be saved outside WebINF folder, parallel to WebINF folder or outside WebINF folder. So let me save with the name, save as, let me delete this name, let me give the name, what is this, home.html. Generally remember one thing, while giving name for HTML files, JSP files, we go for lowercase. If multiple words are there, they will be separated with what? Underscore symbol. Generally we never follow Java naming conventions while giving names to HTML files. It's a different one. And that's a recommendation only. If you are interested, you can continue with that. Fine here. So home page, welcome to Java. Similarly, I have to develop one more HTML page. That is about us page. There also I want to take h1, this time style is equal to text hyphen align center, about us page, close h1. So here I am just taking about us page, Naresh IT. It's a contact us page, sorry. I think I have taken it as a contact us page. Contact us page, Naresh IT, Satyam Theatre. Yes, phone number, some phone number. To get the new lines, we have to use BR tags, you know that. To get the new lines, we have to use BR tag. Again BR tag, otherwise new line will not come. Everything comes in a single line. Here BR tag. So let me save this one. What's the name we decided to give? Contact us.html. And I want to provide one more hyperlink to go back to home page. Yes, so let me go back to home page. How to provide A for anchor tag. So when I click on it, where it should go back here? It should go back to home.html. That's why I am typing hyper reference value as what? href is equal to home. Close the anchor tag. So here is one hyperlink. You click on it, it will go there. You click on it, it will go there. So with this we completed the development of the web components. That's nice. So with this I can definitely say development is done. So now step number 4, start the Tomcat server. Yes, by going to bin directory you can start the Tomcat server. How you have to start, you know, Tomcat home / bin directory. There you will get Tomcat 9/8.exe file. If you are having Tomcat 9, you will get Tomcat 9.exe. If you are having Tomcat 8, you will get Tomcat 8.exe. Just click on it, you will start that. Tomcat 7, you will get Tomcat 7.exe file. So in my system, Tomcat is already in running mode. That's a good news. Yes. What's the port number here? For HTTP, it is using port number 8081. Okay. Then deploy, step 5. Deploy the web application. You know that what is deployment? The process of keeping developed web application in web server is technically called as what? Deploy. Copy. So that :/first app to Tomcat home / what folder? Web apps folder. Tomcat home / web apps folder. So that's that much easy it is. These two are the backup files, really not required. Let's delete them. So copy this, copied it, I think we have got Tomcat in C drive. That's nice. Okay, you can take any version. Okay, in this mission somehow Tomcat 7 is there, it seems. I am working with that. Save, paste. Yes, with this what is done? Deployment is also done. So you can see the confirmation here. Deploying web application in Tomcat 7 web apps folder, and you can see the message also here. If I go that side, yes, first app, you will see the message first app also ready. Then what is this? Test the application. Test the application. Let me test the application by putting proper URL. http://localhost. Tomcat is running on which port number? 8081. That HTTP port number. Don't worry about remaining port numbers. When you look at the server, you have to look at this HTTP port number, not the other port numbers. Yes, what's the name of the web application? First app. What's the first page you want to see? Home.html. Yeah, in real internet, these kind of URLs, lengthy URLs will be mapped with the domain names. That's why the moment we type the domain name, gmail.com first page comes, yahoo.com first page comes. But right now, we have not purchased any domain name and we are not going to keep this application in the internet. So we didn't map this URL with any domain name. That's why we have to type complete URL. Technically, this is called what? URL, Universal Resource Locator. Because using this, we can locate the resource on the internet. But right now, our application is not there in the internet. But still, it is called as what? Uniform Resource Locator or Universal Resource Locator. What is the meaning of this URL? HTTP is the protocol. Localhost 8081. Right now, web server Tomcat is there in the same mission. Okay, that's why I am giving host name and port number of the Tomcat. Otherwise, how does this request knows I should go to Tomcat server? So you should mention name and location of host name and port number of what? Tomcat. In the Tomcat server, there may be a number of applications that are deployed. But how does it knows it has to give request to this application only? So that is, I am mentioning name of the application first app. And as usually, what is this? Home.html. So the page which I want to give, this is the page, because HTML components are identified with its what? File names only. Just write the file name. So it's a URL syntax here. Colon after protocol, / before host name. This is the syntax of the URL. We cannot question the syntax. So this indicates browser should give request to what? Server using protocol HTTP. Which server? The server that is running in the current computer on 8081 port number. Right now Tomcat is running. What do you mean by localhost? Being in a computer, if you want to refer a computer, use the term called what? Localhost. Use the term called localhost. In that server, so many applications will be there. Which web application? First app, right? In that web application, what is the page you want to request? Home.html. That's why you have to write the URL. Let me test it, because in order to test it, I have to type this URL in the browser address bar. I need to type the URL in the browser address bar. Yes, we are getting our first page, home page, welcome to Java, and we got one small hyperlink. Click on it, contact us. So in contact page, we got this message. If you are interested, you can add images and all this stuff. Again home, contact us, again home, contact us. So like this, we can do navigation between two pages. So what is the target of this entire process here? Developing web application, deploying that one in server and testing it. But we decided to keep only static web components having ability to generate what? Static web pages. Having ability to generate what? Static web pages. Yes, we exactly done the same, right? So first we design deployment directory structure. Then we developed web components in that. Then we start the server. Then we deployed it, and lastly we tested it. For testing, we typed URL in the browser address bar. The moment you press enter key, the URL generates the request. The request goes to what? Server. Server passes the request to what? Web application. And in that web application, appropriate web components will be picked up and what? Executed. generated output comes to what? Server, and server passes the output to whom? Web browser, and browser displays it in the form of what? Web pages. So this is the plan. So I hope you benefited it. In next video I am going to talk about how to develop web application having servlet components as the web component. Servlet components as the web component. That is the target of next video. I hope you benefited with this video. You can catch me for more videos in the YouTube. Thank you.